Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Across State Lines. I'm your host, Danielle. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 9 of the podcast, where today we will be covering the cases of Tyler and Ariana Payne from Tucson, Arizona. Before we begin, I would like to put a disclaimer here that this case does deal with the abuse and death of 2 children, so if this is something that you will find distressing, please skip this episode and join us again on Monday for our next case. I had initially found this case early on in my writing career, and it's one that has stuck with me because it was truly difficult to read about and to research, and I have never forgotten it. While it's technically solved, one of the children is still considered missing, so I think it's important to highlight their case and to keep their memories alive. In December of 2005, Christopher Payne picked up his children from their mother's house for a weekend trip and never returned them. The children's mother, Jamie, fought hard to have her children returned to her, but due to miscommunication between CPS and the police department, they allowed the children to continue residing with their father. Just under 2 years later, an employee at a storage rental center went to clear out a storage unit when she discovered a plastic bin filled with liquid and swarming with flies. When she went to dump the bin, the liquid spilled from the container, and inside she saw a duffel bag. She finished cleaning the unit, but later that night when she went out with friends and relayed the story to them, they urged her to call police. When police arrived at the dumpster and opened the duffel bag, they discovered the body of 3-year-old Ariana Payne. Sadly, Tyler's body has never been found. But before we jump into the case, I'd like to remind everyone that Across State Lines is available on all podcast streaming platforms, such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and anywhere else that you might listen to podcasts. If you're liking Across State Lines and would like to leave us a rating or a review, it would be greatly appreciated. If you'd like to leave us any feedback, please feel free to visit our website and send us an email. Now, let's jump into the case of Tyler and Ariana Payne and the trial of Christopher Payne and Reina Gonzalez. Tyler Christopher Payne was born on November 15, 2001, and spent his 4 years of life in Tucson, Arizona. Tyler's younger sister, Ariana, followed less than 1 year after Tyler was born and came into this world on October 18, 2002. When Tyler was 2 months old, his parents, Christopher Payne and Jamie Hollum, were married. This marriage didn't last long, however, and the couple separated the following year, with Jamie being given full custody over Tyler and his younger sister, Ariana. Christopher was given a child support order to pay monthly once the divorce was final, but by 2006, Christopher was $19,000 behind on his payments. In December of 2005, Christopher spoke to Jamie about wanting to have partial visitation with his children, and Jamie agreed it would be okay to do so. When January of 2006 rolled around, Christopher expressed that he wanted to have the children over at his home for a weekend stay. Christopher lived at the Portofino Apartments in Tucson with his girlfriend Reina Gonzalez and the child that they had together, Chris Jr. Jamie agreed to the weekend visit. However, when she awaited for Christopher to drop the kids back off after the weekend, he never showed up. When Jamie spoke to Christopher to find out where he was, he kept making endless excuses on why he needed to extend the kids' stay, before he eventually stopped answering or returning her calls altogether. After 2 months without her children, Jamie contacted the police in March in order to have them returned to her. Jamie had already been involved with CPS the year prior when they received an anonymous phone call stating that Jamie and her boyfriend were using methamphetamines and abusing the children. This claim was investigated, but it was found out to be unsubstantiated, and they closed the case the following year. It turned out that though Jamie had an addiction in the past, she had been clean since 2003. Jamie went to police with documents to prove that she had full custody of Tyler and Ariana, and police soon after involved CPS in the case. A caseworker from CPS would mistakenly tell authorities that Jamie was under investigation and was uncooperative in their former case against her. This was untrue, however, as the case was officially closed, and Jamie had been fully cooperative throughout it. This same caseworker would speak to Christopher that February in 2006 when he called CPS to tell them that Jamie had left the children with him. The caseworker encouraged Christopher to file for full custody of Tyler and Ariana without looking into his background at all. Had she properly done so, she would have seen his criminal record, which had charges for domestic violence as well as various drug and alcohol-related charges. This caseworker and her supervisor had agreed that the two children were better off with their father and told police so. Once police spoke to CPS, they decided that they would not continue their investigation into Christopher or the whereabouts of the children, nor would they help return Jamie's children to her. An officer did visit Tyler and Ariana at one point at Christopher's apartment and claimed that they were both happy and healthy in his care. Jamie, however, would never see her children again. When Christopher hadn't paid the rent on his storage unit on the 500 block along Price Road in Tucson, the manager at the storage company decided it was time to clean it out in order to rent it to the next customer. When she opened it in the beginning of 2007, she noticed a foul odor that prevented her from thoroughly cleaning it until February. When she began to clean out the unit, she discovered a 25-gallon tub that was swarming with flies and bugs. She took the bin to toss in the trash, but as she began to do so, the lid popped off and liquid began to pour out onto her and the street. Inside that bin sat a duffel bag. That evening, as the manager was out with friends, she began to tell them about the messy job she was tasked with that day. The bin, the flies, the foul-smelling liquid that drained out of the plastic tub. One of her friends had suggested that a body may have been inside the duffel bag and to consider calling police. This prompted the manager to call the authorities and report what she had seen inside of the storage unit. On February 18th, 2007, the police arrived at the storage center to investigate the bin and the duffel bag, which was now sitting inside of a dumpster. When they opened the duffel bag, they discovered a black plastic garbage bag within it. Inside the garbage bag was Ariana's body. Unfortunately, and surprisingly, they decided not to search the rest of the dumpster, which may have contained Tyler's body as well. They later concluded that it was very possible that Tyler's body was also inside the dumpster, and it may have been hauled away to a local landfill. Because of the state of decomposition of Ariana's body, a proper autopsy couldn't be performed. However, they believe that she may have died from starvation, and she had suffered numerous injuries. She had 12 broken ribs, a broken vertebra, as well as a broken jaw, forearm, and shoulder blade. All these injuries were in different stages of healing, meaning the abuse was happening over a long period of time, up to 6 weeks before she died. The investigation also discovered that Christopher had rented the storage unit in September of 2006. Authorities guessed that the two children had been killed sometime between March and September of 2006. Both Christopher and his girlfriend Raina were arrested. Christopher for the murder of his two children, and Raina on one count of child abuse against Ariana. In May, Raina was additionally charged with the murder and child abuse of both Ariana and Tyler. A roommate of the couple came forward stating that she had lived with them in June of 2006, and she had never seen Tyler or Ariana. The roommate was told that the children were living with Jamie, but did recall hearing a suspicious noise coming from the closet one time while living there. Neighbors reported seeing Raina and Christopher's son, Christopher Jr., quite often, but they had never seen Tyler or Ariana, and weren't even aware that the two children had ever lived there at all. Authorities decided to search the apartment as it was unoccupied at the time. The family had been evicted in September of that year, but the landlord stated that he was unable to rent the unit to anyone else, as the smell and condition of the apartment was so poor. When authorities searched, they found blood stains on the wall of a closet that was filled with trash. They also discovered a hole carved in the wall of the closet, which contained hair and feces, as well as more blood in a storage container that was sitting on the apartment's balcony. The couple was facing the death penalty for 3 factors. 1, that there were multiple victims. 2, that the victims were children. And finally, for the, quote, cruel, heinous, and depraved manner of the crimes that they were charged with. Initially, Raina claimed that she was out of town for a week that summer, and when she had left, the 2 children were fine. She stated that when she came back, the children were gone, with Christopher telling her that they were sent back to live with their mother. Later, she changed her plea to guilty and was eventually sentenced to 22 years in prison. Once she was charged, Raina testified against her boyfriend, Christopher. She claimed that both Tyler and Ariana were locked inside of a closet for 24 hours a day, that he beat the children, and at first only fed them 1 sandwich a day before letting them completely starve. He stated that she had never once called the authorities, nor did she attempt to help the children in any way. The prosecution noted that Christopher Jr., Raina and Christopher's child, was well cared for and never suffered any of the abuse as Tyler and Ariana had. When Christopher had a chance to speak at trial, he stated that he hadn't seen the children in years. Then he claimed that they were living with Jamie, before finally admitting that the children had died in his home. His story was outrageous, claiming that the deaths of his 4-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter were suicides, that the children had deliberately starved themselves to death in protest of not being returned to their mother. He said that Ariana had died first in July, and that when he discovered her body, he spent an entire day attempting to perform CPR in order to revive her. He then stated that he gave up and placed Ariana in a trash bag, hidden in the back of the closet, until Tyler died a week later. When questioned about Ariana's broken bones, he had no explanation. His attorneys then asked that he be given a sentence for second-degree murder, now claiming that it was Raina who beat and starved the children, and his only crime was that he didn't protect them from her. Terry White, Christopher's aunt, was also called to testify at Christopher's child, and her testimony was sinister. Terry claimed that on Easter of 2006, she had visited her nephew's apartment to bring cascarones over for the family for the holiday. Cascarones are hollow eggshells that are filled with confetti or small toys, and are used to break over the heads of friends and family for special occasions, like on Easter. Terry had stated at the trial that when she entered the home that it was incredibly messy and dirty, but what she noticed most was her little grandniece, Ariana, who she said had looked unwell, scrawny, and her hair was a mess. She stated during her testimony, quote, "She didn't look very happy, and she didn't sound very happy," end quote. Terry went on to say that the little girl had kept trying to mutter something to her, but she couldn't hear what she was trying to say. She claimed that 2 months after Easter, she had visited the Payne home again to drop off tamales, but that she hadn't seen Ariana or Tyler at all during her visit. Another witness was brought to the stand to testify, a friend of Raina's named Cameron Calderon. Cameron claimed that the last time she saw Tyler was in the summer of 2006, where he had been seated on a mattress in the living room and his cheek and both arms had bruises. She told the courtroom that Tyler had looked very sad. She claimed that when she was initially interviewed by police, that she had told them that Raina was very mean to both children and that Raina couldn't stand either one of them. She went on to say that Raina gave preferential treatment to her and Christopher's shared son, Chris Jr. A third witness was brought to the stand, a drug dealer of Christopher's named Debbie Reyes. Debbie told the court that whenever she was with Christopher, he would often get phone calls from his girlfriend, where she would threaten to kill Ariana and Tyler if he did not come home to deal with them, and that she could hear the children screaming in the background while he was on the phone. However, Raina later contested this, stating that she had tried to stand up to Christopher on his abuse to the children, and in turn, he abused her. Raina claimed that Christopher had hit her more times than she could count, and that the first time he physically abused her was when she was pregnant. However, when cross-examined, Raina had admitted that she told police before the trial that Christopher had hit her exactly 2 times. The defense employed other tactics in order to shine the light off of Christopher to avoid the death penalty. They focused on his drug addiction and dysfunctional childhood, and stated that his mother dying when he was 1 year old caused him to spiral into a life of drugs, starting in junior high. The defense claimed that at the time of the killings, he was using heroin up to 4 times a day, as well as other substances. They also tried the tactic of shifting the blame solely onto Raina, claiming that she had starved the children because she resented them. This did nothing to sway the judge or jury, however. They found Christopher guilty of 2 counts of murder, 3 counts of child abuse, and 2 counts of concealment and abandonment of a body. He was sentenced to death, and he is still awaiting his execution. Tyler's body has never been found, and authorities are unsure of where he could be. They believe that his body might be buried under garbage at the Los Reyes landfill in Tucson, but it is unclear if any attempts have ever been made to recover him. As of now, he is still listed as a missing person, but authorities are certain that he is no longer alive. Jamie went on to file a lawsuit against CPS and the local police, with CPS paying her the amount of $1 million in a settlement. The lawsuit against the police has been dismissed, stating that there was insufficient evidence that authorities could have ever known that Tyler and Ariana were in danger with their father. While the correct people were charged in this case, and there has been justice and resolution in that sense, Tyler's family wants closure in the form of having his body returned to them for a proper burial. But as of now, the whereabouts of his body is still sadly unknown. Thank you so much for listening to Across State Lines, and we will be back next week to dive into another unsolved case. Please follow or subscribe to Across State Lines on your podcast listening platform, so that way new episodes will drop directly into your listening feed. If you'd like to rate or review Across State Lines on whatever platform you listen to, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, and join us again next week.